Hello, Irish fans. It's time for our Notre Dame football update with blueandgold.com's football beat reporter Tyler Horka. Tyler, you, of course, were present for Brian Kelly's Monday media availability, and it seems to be a weekly thing. What is the latest on Kyle Hamilton?
Yeah, I think Brian Kelly was more forthcoming than he's been in the last 3 weeks since Kyle Hamilton was injured against USC on October 23rd. At first it was, right after that game, it was maybe Kyle Hamilton will play against North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that didn't happen. The week after that, on Monday, he said he's out for the Navy game. Obviously, didn't play against Navy, ends up not playing against Virginia. It's been 3 games now since Kyle Hamilton has played. And yesterday, Brian Kelly said, 6-week timetable for that injury to the knee that Kyle Hamilton sustained a few weeks ago. So we're basically right in the middle of that right now. With 2 games left on the regular season, I don't see him playing the rest of the regular season, even though Brian Kelly didn't explicitly say that. That's where we're at with Kyle Hamilton right now. It's If Notre Dame sneaks into a college football playoff, I would expect to see him on the field late December, early January. But right now, Kyle Hamilton's kind of in limbo.
When Coach Kelly said 6 weeks, were there many media members pulling out their calendar apps on their phone and trying to count up exactly when 6 weeks would fall?
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of fingers hitting the keyboard too, because it was, like I said, the most newsworthy thing that Brian Kelly has said about Kyle Hamilton in the last 3 weeks. Putting a definitive number on it with 6 weeks was kind of telling.
Yeah, I watched those live, as you know, because I prepped the video side, and that's exactly what I did. I was like, oh, six, because it was the first time you really heard some sort of projection on a duration of how long he'd be out. So that was
Exactly.
definitely an interesting tidbit. One of the overall themes to Coach Kelly's presser yesterday was just the continued emergence of new players on defense and development of players in season. I think probably headlined by Riley Mills, right, and his performance versus Virginia. What did you think of his performance?
Oh yeah, he was awesome. He looks like a monster, and we hired a good freelance photographer who got a nice shot of Riley flexing after one of those 2 sacks that he got, and I'm like,
Yep.
man, this is only a true sophomore. He's going to be really good. Didn't get a lot of playing time as a true freshman last year, and really as a true sophomore this year because Notre Dame has just had a bunch of dudes along the defensive line, right? But you can kind of tell that he's the next star in the making, and I think it was really telling what Brian Kelly said after the game. Obviously, MTA was out with the flu bug that went around the Notre Dame locker room, so that kind of opened up some a defensive end slot for Riley Mills to slide over there. He's been playing tackle for most of his Notre Dame career, but Brian Kelly slides him over there. He gets 2 sacks, and Kelly after the game says, I think he's merited and he's warranted to stay at defensive end moving forward. So I think with guys like Isaiah Foskey and Myron leaving at the end of the year, presumably,
Mhm.
Riley Mills is the next guy at defensive end, and he kind of showed what he can do against Virginia.
Other, I don't want to say new faces, but emerging players that put up some stat lines on Saturday. Xavier Watts with 5 total tackles, 4 solo. Ramon Henderson. What do you think about him playing safety? That looked pretty natural.
Yeah, and those are 2 guys that have kind of swapped positions this year, right? Xavier Watts starts the season as a wide receiver. Now he's getting reps at safety. And Ramon Henderson, usually a cornerback, looked really good at safety. You look at that interception that he made against Virginia, albeit against a true freshman quarterback, but he still had to run, half the length of the field to go over there and then have the ball skills to come away with the interception. So I think he looks really good. He's rangy. He is athletic. He's got good size. I think Notre Dame might have found something in safety with both of those guys, Watts and Henderson.
Yeah, you said it with ball skills and the ability to go up and attack the football. That's something that has not always been there amongst the Notre Dame safeties over the last few years. Tyler, college football playoff, the committee will update their rankings this evening. Notre Dame came into this past weekend at number 9. We did have one loss in front of them. Just what are your thoughts and predictions going into the update tonight?
Yeah, you can usually glean at least a little bit based on what happens with the coaches and Associated Press polls. And Notre Dame was number 7 in both of those polls going into last week, move
Mm-hmm.
up to number 6 in both of those polls. And look, if that was the case with the college football playoff, I think Notre Dame would be feeling really good moving up to number 6 in the college football playoff. But ranked number 9 last week, Oklahoma loses. I think you can really only reasonably expect Notre Dame to move up to number 8, but number 8 is better than number 9, and they were number 10 in the first one, and number 8 is better than both of those. So steady movement, chaos could still be had. I think the Big Ten might cannibalize itself. You've got 3 Big Ten teams sitting in front of Notre Dame in the college football playoff rankings right now, and theoretically 2 of them could easily move out, and Notre Dame could move past them. There's a world in which all of those teams, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, end up with 2 losses at the end of the regular season, and maybe Notre Dame moves by all 3 of them. So
Mm.
I said it on the radio with Darren Pritchett, WSBT, earlier this week. Notre Dame needs chaos. Right now, it hasn't really been that chaotic, and Notre Dame is still rising. So get to 11-1 and see what happens.
Notre Dame rushed for 249 yards against Virginia, but their leading rusher in the game, Kyron Williams, only had 70 yards. So this kind of like reinvigorated rushing attack by committee. What do you think about them?
Yeah, I think it just says everything about the Notre Dame offensive line and how far that unit has come. Anybody who's running behind that line right now seems to be doing great. I mean, like you said, 70 yards is not a lot for Kyron Williams, but he only had 14 carries, so
Mm-hmm.
that's a good, 5 yards per carry average right there. Logan Diggs averaged about 7 yards per carry. Kyron Williams didn't get a lot of touches, but I think that's just the way that backfield is going right now. When he got injured, Logan Diggs stepped in, and it's kind of been the Kyron Logan 1-2 punch. But Tyler Buckner only had 10 yards rushing, and yet Notre Dame still runs for 249 yards. So I think across the board, that tells me that the offensive line is moving people, it's creating holes. Anybody that gets in there is going to gain at least a few yards. And obviously, those numbers were bolstered by a couple end arounds too. I thought
Yep.
Tommy Rees did a really good job in getting Lorenzo Styles the ball in space, getting Braden Lindsey the ball in space. So um, at the beginning of the year, I mean, how far have we come since that Florida State game, right, where Jack Cohn throws for 366 yards and 4 touchdowns,
Yeah.
then go on the road and beat a team like Virginia and only score 28 points, and um, you know Jack Cohn only throws for less than 200 yards in that game, and Notre Dame still wins by 25. So
Right.
it's become a ground attack, control the game, time of possession type of team, and I just think that's crazy that it's become that way given the way the season started.
Yeah, it's not just the defense and the new faces that have developed. There's been a lot of development on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, I think listen, if Notre Dame goes 11-1, I think people are just going to be saying this is Brian Kelly's best coaching job. And I think maybe some people would argue 2017 how well they did after the 4-8 season, but on both sides of the ball, maybe it's the entirety of the coaching staff that gets the recognition as best coaching job for Notre Dame in quite some time, because it seems like everyone's getting it done right now.
Yeah, and it's just all about steadying the ship. You go back to early October, right after that Cincinnati loss. I think a lot of people said this would be a 3-loss team, a 4-loss
Mm-hmm.
team. Well, they've got a couple teams on the schedule, Georgia Tech and Stanford, that they should easily beat. All of a sudden, this is only a 1-loss team. And no matter what bowl game, college football playoff, New Year's Six, whatever it is, I agree with you in the sense that this is an awesome coaching job by not just Brian Kelly, but everyone involved who had to come together and make sure this thing didn't go off the rails. I mean, they were 4 minutes away from losing 2 in a row at
Right.
Virginia Tech there, and then I think people would have really been hitting the panic button. But a month after that, a month and a half after that, this is a 1-loss football team. This is a team we're talking about college football playoff with.
Yeah.
So awesome job with Brian Kelly and company, because this has truly turned into a pretty good Notre Dame football season.
Tyler, we always appreciate your time. I'll see you for the podcast tomorrow. Notre Dame plays Georgia Tech on Saturday at home, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Once again, everyone hit like on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out blueandgold.com for our coverage of the upcoming Notre Dame Georgia Tech game. Plus, you can get a lot of articles wrapping up their win on the road at Virginia. So thanks for tuning in, everyone.